As Latinos, we need to do a much better job of telling our own stories. In this episode, we'll be talking to two men that are educators, artists, and dedicated to telling our story, the Latino story.
Welcome to the Latino Business Report. This podcast covers business, people, and issues of the day from a Latino perspective. The Latino Business Report is brought to you by TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. TAMAC is the leading Hispanic business organization in Texas since 1975. Now for your host, J.R. Gonzalez.
Rupert, how are you today?
I'm doing great.
Now, Rupert, you are a producer, screenwriter, and actor.
For this particular film, for Vecinos, Love Thy Neighbor, and those were my roles. I am primarily a playwright. Mostly do theater. Started Teatro Vivo in Austin back in the year 2000 with a lot of my original scripts, and love producing new works, love new plays. When we were approached, or I got approached to help turn one of my plays into a film, I put on that producer hat, and then during the course of a lot of the development and talk, they said, okay, now you're the one that has to write the script. So I was volunteered by the producers to actually produce the first version of the script. And Alex Avila, who's here with us today too, had a little hand in the script with some revisions. He's also a screenwriter. And so he offered some pretty good suggestions that were incorporated into the final version. And then I ended up being the male lead in the film, mostly because I'd played the role in the theatrical production. So I knew the character pretty well.
In other words, since you wrote it, you got to be it.
Yeah. Well, it was great. It was more budget, like we couldn't afford a Hollywood actor.
Eddie almost wasn't available.
Eddie almost, okay. All right. Now, Alex, you are the director of this film.
I am. Yeah, and I got involved. I've known Rupert for a long time. I think in the 90s, he was involved in a production which needed live video. There was a live video aspect to it. And I ran one of the cameras, and I think that's when I first met Rupert. And then several years ago, I wrote and produced a feature film called Closer to Bottom that was directed by Jesse Borrego, who's a known Hollywood actor. And we got Rupert to play the father in that role. And so when I went to one of the staged events that he and the producers had put together to try to drum up local support for the film version of Vecinos, I went up to him, I said, hey, who's writing your screenplay? He says, well, I am. I go, well, if you need any suggestions, I wouldn't mind taking a look at the script and making some, concrete suggestions if you'd like. And so we started going back and forth that way. And before I know it, I was the director of the film. So that's how I got involved.
Was that the budget, Rupert?
Yeah, that was
another budgetary decision.
Right. Well, the producers were all theater people. Myself, my wife Joanne, who had been the business manager for Teatro Vivo, Raul Garza, who actually has a TKO business called TKO, and it's a marketing firm. He's also a playwright, but he's also just a theater person. Karinna Perez Cantu, a wonderful actress, a writer as well. She's a wonderful writer. And Jo Janie Segura, who is a theater teacher. So all of us were theater people. And we had done movies. We had been in front of the camera before, but none of us had actually created a film from start to finish. And so when Alex came on board and approached us and came to one of our meetings, I had worked with him on Closer to the Bottom. I knew he had produced that film and knew how to make movies. So he was the perfect choice because he was going to direct, but he also could help guided us quite a bit in terms of getting the product done.
Alex, how many movies have you actually produced?
Well, I'm working on my third feature now, but I've worked on a lot of shorts and a lot of other people's productions as well. My bachelor's degree was in film production in the 90s, back when we actually shot film on film. And back then I co-founded an organization called the Chicano Latino Film Forum. And what that did was it would program not only Latino films, but we would actually bring in the filmmakers. And so we'd connect filmmakers with audiences so they could have a dialogue. And so we brought in quite a few people locally from Texas, and we also brought in some people from California sometimes. And that went on from 1993 through 1999. By 1999, Cine Las Americas in Austin had started to take over, and we sort of just let them take the mantle from there.
Okay. Now, Alex, where are you from originally?
I am a native of Austin, Texas.
Born and raised?
I've got 4 grandparents and 3 great-grandparents buried in Austin, Texas.
Wow. Now, you actually, what high school did you go to in Austin?
I went to Austin High. I was bused.
Bust in.
Bust
The busing,
in
okay.
from the east side.
They needed more Latinos, more
They
Mexicans
did.
in that white high school.
They
Okay.
did.
Now, Alex, you also, and you're a graduate from, 3 degrees from University
I
of
have
Texas.
a degree in radio, TV, film production, and then a master's and PhD in journalism. I was a journalist for 25 years, probably principally 12 years with NPR.
Okay, impressive. Well, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Rupert, now you've been involved in acting ever since you were a child, from what I understand.
Since I was an altar boy, right?
Since you were an altar boy.
That's performing for me. That sort of put me on the stage, right? But since high school, got involved in acting, got a degree in theater education, so I knew immediately that
Also from the University of
right,
Texas?
that I wanted to go stay in theater, stay in the field, and I love teaching, so it was a natural fit. So I did. I graduated in 76, went to Houston, started working with youth, creating new plays, writing new scripts, which is one of the big things that still exists today. This was 1976, and there were very few scripts available for high school Latino students. And I can tell you that to this day, there still is a lack of scripts for kids, for theater, both not just for high school students, but also for adults. I mean, the Latino playwrights are out there. They're just not getting produced, and their scripts are not getting distributed, and because they don't have places for them to go. You look at the playwriting programs, and there's very few. That's why we started one when we were with Teatro Vivo. We started a Austin Latino, which is now Austin Latinx Theater, new play festival. We've had going now for about 10 years, and there's just not enough programs out there for people to develop the writers. And Alex probably will agree with this, that everything starts with the writer. The movies, the plays, we are just not represented in the arts. And even with this COVID thing that happened, where we had all these places have to shut down, most of the money started going to the major institutions. I know that Mejiarte in Austin is struggling and is looking at possibly, not getting the kind of funding they had in the past, even though they've been one of the major institutions in Austin. They're a Latino institution, and they're not thought of as something that needs to continue to be supported. So anyway, I could get on my little bandwagon about, as our population increases, our representation has not increased. We have still are like an afterthought, and we've got to make more noise. We've got to bang the drum a little bit more, but we also got to put out better products. I think that we're good there. I think that the films that I've seen at the festivals that we've been participating in, and the films that I went to go see before we started making the movie, because I was trying to educate myself and figure out what our film was going to look like, or what I wanted it to look like. I was just totally impressed by the quality of the films that Latinos are making in the United States. And I know that, the ones that come from Mexico or South America, well, they've been making Spanish language films forever and ever. And the Latinos are, while they've already made some really good films, they just don't get the representation.
Well, either one of you, what is it? I mean, we have the population, we have the market, we have the buying power. Latinos go to theaters on opening weekend more than any other segment, yet we don't have the representation, on the big screen or even on the small screen.
There's a history there that's dominated the scene, and representation really is important, because there was this joke in the 1990s when we were doing the Chicano Latino Film Forum. It takes certain amount of time for our broadcast signals to pass through space, and if somebody who was 10 light years away would see what we were broadcasting, they would see that in the 1990s there were more aliens like Ralph on TV than there were Latinos, because that's what they would see from our media. And that disappearance hasn't changed much. I mean, you'll see certain stars that will have impact on certain shows. And so, yeah, that's been a plus. We've got the stars, we've got the J-Los of this world, we've got the Eddie Olmoses of this world that are out there, but there's so much more young talent there that could also be not only participating, but telling their own stories. And that's what I think we're most proud of with Vecinos, Love Thy Neighbor. It's not just filled with Latinos in front of and behind the camera, but it's Latinos telling their own stories. In the 90s, there were a bunch of movies that were groundbreaking, things like American Me and Blood In, Blood Out. But for a long time, that's what Hollywood wanted. It's like,
they always have. If you're going to have a Latino in the film, it's going to be the bad guy.
It's the thug,
cartel,
the gang
or it's
member.
going to be a bandido, or it's going to be somebody robbing. I mean, they're not good roles, or they're maids, or they're workers,
right,
or they're hat in hand in a very submissive
representation. That's one of the things we're proud of with Vecinos Love Thy Neighbor is we tell our own stories, not just in terms of in front of the camera, but behind the camera. Because so many Latinos don't have control over the means of productions, and they don't get to tell their own stories. And that's why I created a new company I call Tex-Mex Filmworks, which we're now developing one of my scripts. And the goal of that company is to tell sophisticated, high-quality stories and to avoid the stereotypes of, gang members, crime members, maids, and to a large extent, even the immigrant story. Because we've been here generations and constantly being referred to as immigrants in a place where we've been here for a long, long, long time. It starts to wear on us. And so, we want to control those things, and we have to do it ourselves because Hollywood's not going to do it. We've got to do it ourselves.
We need to tell our own story.
Yes.
And that's what I love about this movie, Vecinos. I mean, we're telling our own story, and it just resonates. I mean, I saw that, and just so many things that just seem familiar. Now, Rupert, you've done an excellent job with that. And let me before we get into the movie a little bit, your background. You've been at it for a while, but you've come out in some movies yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I started. I started doing theater. I was with a group called Teatro de Esperanza in Santa Barbara, California for several years. And then we decided to return to Austin. We had 2 kids in Santa Barbara and we were there. And we came back and I kind of fell out of the theater scene for about 12 years. I stopped doing movies, doing anything. And my son is the one that started getting interested in film, Julio Carreon-Reyes. And he ended up getting a part in the sequel to Lonesome Dove, Streets of Laredo.
Okay.
And when he did that, I auditioned for a part in that same film. They called up and I auditioned, and an agent saw the audition and called me up and said, "Hey, I didn't know you acted." And I said, "Well, I didn't," because she was Julio's agent, right? And so she said, "Would you like representation?" So I said, "Sure." And almost immediately started going out to auditions, and I got a part in The Office Space first. I played the janitor, the waiter at the very end of that movie. Miss Congeniality, I played a security guard at the pageant. I did do probably my favorite scene I did for Rough Riders, which was a made-for-TV movie, but it got edited out.
Oh, man.
I got cut from that. But I've done some episodes now more recently. Queen of the South. I was in Queen of the South. And
Love that show.
Done some other films. HEB, a lot of HEB commercials. I just did a little piece for Ethos Life Insurance for my friend Miguel Alvarez, who's a great film director here in Austin. So, I'm doing commercial work mostly. Still continue to act, trying to do stuff. But this is the first time I've done one, produced it myself.
So you guys come to the table with experience.
Right, in front of the camera.
You can tell that we're not children here. We're a little bit older. So what I tell people is we're experienced storytellers, and we've been doing it for a long time. My degrees for the most part are journalism, but it's still storytelling and being able to tell a good story. And like we said, taking ownership of the story. That's really what we're about.
And we talk about this lack of representation in film and television, and I tend to agree exactly with what Alec was saying, is that we're not the ones that control the means of distribution, the means of production. We have the Latino actors out there. You got Martin Sheen, you got Andy Garcia, and the up-and-coming young actors, Raul Castillo. And, their actors are out there, and the writers are out there. You have good writers that are working.
Even the filmmakers, because we just came from a festival, and there's some talented young filmmakers out there. And
right. So it's not a problem with the product. The problem that we're able to make a really good product. It's just that we don't control the choices. We're not the ones that pick them for Netflix or HBO. We're not the ones that that put in the big money for distribution or publicity and marketing. I mean, you look at the movie that Tom Hanks just did, News of the World, which is a wonderful book. I read the book years ago. Oh my God, the publicity and marketing for that every day I would read something on Facebook or see something on the internet, and the little feed on the side of my Yahoo. I don't know what kind of money it costs to promote that movie, but when's the last time you saw any kind of money like that behind a Latino movie or a Latino show? You don't. I mean,
In the Heights.
In the Heights,
yeah.
And In the Heights is wonderful. And that there's another story there within the Heights in terms of, you were saying, why don't we see more of our work up on the screen or on the small screen? And you saw the controversy that came out from within our own community.
Really?
Within our own community, we started fighting about certain things about that film instead of just sitting back and saying, look, this was great. This is a wonderful, wonderful production, wonderful film, a wonderful play, and in celebrating that, instead we had to find the little thing. So we're kind of a little bit sometimes. What do they call that? The crawdads in the bucket.
The crabs in the bucket,
Yeah.
where we're all pulling each other down.
That was, you're absolutely right. It was a great film, Latino cast. It really celebrated, life. And for our own community to start nitpicking that thing to death and being, you should point them out, but you don't have to be so critical about some of the stuff.
It was
that's
a
out there.
valid criticism, sure.
No, granted, valid, but to a point where it's, all over the news and it almost, to me, it seemed like it was almost persuading people not to go see it because it was like politically incorrect if you went to go see the film, which is ridiculous.
Or something flawed with the movie, right?
Yeah,
The thing
something's
about
wrong.
it is that those Latinos in that movie look like Latinos in real life. We're all sorts of colors, we're
Sure.
and that again, to me, possibly is a problem, is that people just don't want to take a chance with upsetting an audience. Casting a too light-skinned Latino or too dark Latino in a role that is going to cause somebody to have the same backlash that we had for In the Heights, which I think, like I said, it's we've got to support whatever product we put out right now. We're not there yet. We're not anywhere near close to.
About 10-12% of the Latino population is black already. And with the interracial marriages, and we come from about 22 different countries of origin,
Right.
And of course, there's going to be that mix.
I was an editor at Hispanic Magazine, which was pretty influential in the 1990s. And while I was there, on the cover we put these Afro-Latino music executives. And the backlash we got from our own community goes, is this, a black publication or a Hispanic publication? And it was shocking to us that people even had, within our community, they had
Well,
that sort of
we need
reaction.
to accept some truths within our own culture, and that is that how many Africans were brought to Mexico by the Spaniards? And do you think they isolated themselves from the rest of the population? No.
Well, even during the Civil War, there was a lot of enslaved people who came to Mexico,
right.
and enclaves of people there, because at least the Mexican government defended. They're trying to extradite them or get them back, and the Mexican government said no.
Yeah.
We don't believe in slavery, and they're staying here, and they became citizens. And
Right. So I'm just saying is that we've got to stop worrying about our skin color in terms of representation. That if you call yourself Latinx or Latino, then accept it, because we're coming all colors, and we speak all sorts of different languages. The variations of Spanish, right? That's another thing that people will pick out. They say, "Oh, you cast a Puerto Rican in a role that was a Mexican. The accent is wrong," right?
I can't help but wonder, if we're that critical of our own community, how critical are other people that are non-Hispanic looking at our films? And are they being the same way, or is it even worse? Where does it end? What's going on right now? They're doing a remake of West Side Story.
That goes again to my thought of we getting to tell our own stories. They're letting us do remakes of successful One Day at a Time, for example. All right, One Day at a Time, that's great, and I hope all the success for the reboot. But why can't we tell our stories?
Yeah.
And that's where I come back again to why I created that film company, Tex-Mex Filmworks. The screenplay that I've written, it's got a Latino professor married to a Latina attorney, and we live in Texas. We see Latinos in all walks of life as businessmen, as judges, as politicians. They're not all thugs and criminals living in the barrio, struggling, eating beans and
Well, I do know some
tortillas.
politicians that are kind of... And that's why I'm I'm very proud of the movie you guys produced, Vecinos, Love Thy Neighbor. It tells our story. Can we talk, Rupert or Alex, can you tell a little bit, without revealing too much, a little bit about the movie? It's a romantic comedy, and what people can expect when they see it.
Well, I can tell you a motivation in creating the play that led to the creation of the film, and that was my father was married twice. I lost my mom when I was 7 years old, and I can remember how sad my dad was. The pain that he was going through by the loss of this woman that he had been married to for, at the time, I would say almost 15 years, and stayed unmarried until he met another woman. If he didn't get married for about 7 years, and then when he met the other woman, he was totally devoted to her until he died in 2007. But I saw how much he loved this woman and how much he cared for her and devoted himself to the family and making her part of our family. So I wanted to honor my dad by writing a movie about an older man and the love of his life. And So when we meet Roberto, he's a widower, and he meets the other widower that moves in across the street, the hallway in his apartment. And it becomes a relationship that starts as a friendship. And as the circumstances start to change in both their lives, we see their relationship start to grow. I'm not going to tell you where it goes because you have to watch a movie to see how that ends up. But, that's what I was exploring in this film, the relationships of people and how they fall in love. And at the same time, I don't write fluffy art stuff. I like to write stuff that has some sort of social commentary. I call it socially relevant material. I would love my plays to have some socially relevant element to them. So there's comments about what the changes that are happening in East Austin specifically, but those are the changes that are happening all over the country. We're just one of the places that it's happening too in terms of gentrification and the loss of culture, the loss of the spaces and areas that created our community and what the community is.
And so it is a Latino film, but there's a universality to it. We all fall in love. And what I like, I know these characters in terms of I relate to these characters, but also there's an older element. They're more mature. They're not, young kids. But that doesn't mean they don't have something to offer. And so there's a lot of positive messages through these characters in this movie. And so far, very few people have seen it, but those who have been very energetic and positive with the film.
Yeah, currently the film is doing the film festival circuit, and you guys are getting some awards. Amazing feedback from your audiences. I know you are. You should be proud. But where does it go from here? When can this thing be developed into or picked up where more people can see it to understand it now?
Well, we talked about not having control over the means of production. There's also this issue of control of means of distribution. It's like it'd be great. We just put out a movie and put it out on Netflix, and it's not up to us, right? We have to go through agents and distributors because they're the ones that have the access. We finished the film in November just in time to make it into the American film market, and we had several meetings, I would say 7 or 8 meetings with agents and distributors, and after those meetings, we seriously were talking about, we should self-distribute this because what they were offering was not very good.
The future of the movie right now is in the hands of Mila Media out of New York with our representative, Alex Avila, who saw this film just before we took it off of one of our platforms. There's some platforms that you put your film in for distributors and agents and film festivals to see. So they get a password, they get to see it. It's not public. And she caught it right before we took it down.
Like a week, and it's been up there for months.
And so we were getting ready not to pay the fee because we said, well, we're on this other side. Let's let that one go. And she was so passionate about the movie. She's from Mexico. She's a young woman and just loved the film. I would say she's probably in her early 30s. I have never asked her age, like a gentleman.
She's based in New York, but she said after she saw the movie, she was crying. She called her mother in Mexico and just really fell in love with the movie. And when she talked to us, she sold us on the fact of how genuine she was about it and how she got it and how she really wanted as many people to see this movie as possible. And then, in terms of the numbers, because it's still a business, everybody we had talked to up until we talked to Ellie were saying 15-year exclusive contract, 25-30% we would take. And they were talking more when we talked to her of a 3-year non-exclusive contract. And so we still had the freedom to show the movie at other places that we wanted to. It wasn't like we were giving up all the control like the other distributors. It's like, you made the movie, give it to us.
This company gets it. They get the idea that you've worked on this product. It's your product. And I think Ellie summed it up really well. She said, it's like you've baked a cake and we want you to keep as much of the cake. We're going to take a slice because we're going to be doing the business with you, but we want you to keep as much of your cake as you possibly can. So that was a really positive thing for us before we signed with her, and we have signed. You can get a chance to see this movie at the
Latino Film Market
out of New York.
That's going to run July 26th through August 1st, and it's an online festival. But I think the passes are only $10. They're very accessible, so anybody can, at least during that time.
And I think $10 gives you access to all the films.
That's a pass. It's not just a ticket.
Not just our film. But I think it's called the Latino Film Market at .org. I don't think I think it's .org is their website. So, and tickets are on sale now, so you can try to get it, and you can watch Vecinos Love Thy Neighbor there. And otherwise, you're going to have to wait for another film festival and hopefully some distribution.
can get us a distributor out there. Yeah, she's a sales agent.
Well, I'll make sure in the podcast notes to go ahead and put that link so if people want to catch the full feature. Now, the movie was filmed primarily in Buda, Texas. Now, for those who may not be aware, Buda, Texas is actually the home base of TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican-American Chambers of Commerce, who's bringing you this broadcast. And Buda is geographically located just south of Austin, or as folks here in Buda like to say, Austin is a suburb. How did you end up here? How did this movie get made here?
Well, what happened was, as you know, I'm from Austin, generations from Austin, but all my cousins are leaving Austin because they can't afford Austin. They're moving out to Maine, or they're moving out to Del Valley, Pflugerville, Cedar Park, and so they're leaving the city. When I sold what was my grandparents' house on the east side of Austin, I got what I described as an obscene amount of money for it. And so I bought an acre out here in Buda with a house on there. So I got an acre. We actually, when we were looking for a location, we considered building it in my backyard, literally. So we were looking for a location to shoot, and the movie, of course, takes place mostly in an apartment complex. And so I'm also a college professor at Houston Tillotson University, and I teach media, I teach mass communications. And we were having internet problems because of all the construction around Buda. They would break up the streets, and I would lose the internet. And there was a particular construction project that was seriously interfering with my ability to get online. So I would have to come downtown Buda to a coffee shop and get the internet access. I would spend 3 or 4 hours there. And I passed a location, because at that time we were in pre-production for the film, and we were looking for locations. In Buda, it was a Carrington, and it's a activities venue where they often host wedding receptions. And I said, well, we have a wedding scene in the movie. Maybe we can use that. And I contacted them. And when I toured them, I went upstairs, and they had this old apartments upstairs.
Like the building is like 100 years old already, right?
It's ancient, yeah. And I had no idea what was upstairs. I had peeked inside, because you can see inside. They have an outdoor venue, they have an indoor venue, but I had no idea that they had this place upstairs. And bam, like a light went off when I saw that location there. And so we ended up shooting those. We rented the place for a month. We were able to make it look like what it looks like in the movie. We were able to do the reception scenes downstairs and outside, but most of the movie we had to shoot it upstairs in that old spot. It was rickety. We had to have set designers. We had to put doors. There were no doors in there. And we transformed it into, I think, a perfect location for the
And Rupert, movie. When you first saw this building, or were walking up those stairs,
you know that when you one of the things that the difference between a play and a screenplay is the images. You have to have images in your head because you're telling a story through pictures as opposed to dialogue. And so when I first got to this building, I walked into this big room and I thought, okay, it looks like an old store and stuff. And then she said, well, upstairs is up those stairs. And I looked at those staircases and I walked around the corner and saw the wooden stairs going up, and my heart just started racing. I said, oh my God, this is the stairwell that Sylvia's going to lug up her luggage when she helps her mom move into this apartment. And when I walked upstairs and looked down the hallway, it was like the image in my head was almost perfectly portrayed right there. A little narrow hallway with doorways on either side, and one apartment at one end and one apartment on the other end. So it was a perfect situation for shooting, for filming, because the camera could look either way, left, up or down. It didn't. The lighting, there was a lot of windows, a lot of natural light that was flowing into the space. Mike Osmond, our cinematographer, he had, I think, one lighting instrument that he used for the entire film. The rest was all natural light. So you're going to see that in the movie as well. But, I'm a throwback to the old shows. I said I Love Lucy. I love that show and the idea that, Ricky and Lucy lived in an apartment complex owned by the Mertz, Fred and Ethel.
Mertz. I think it was Fred and Ethel Mertz.
Mertz, yeah.
There you go.
And so That's why I set I was going to write a movie. I set it in an apartment. Most Latinos in East Austin don't live in apartments, but this one does. And it's an older apartment building that Roberto had lived in for a long time. And he is a representative of the barrio and how old the barrio is. And so he's kind of is the barrio in a way.
Okay. It's interesting that one of your favorite movies was I Love Lucy, or one of your favorite TV shows. I think because Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, I mean, they were pioneers in the industry as far as the movie industries and what they've done with multiple cameras when they used to use one, and then him wanted to own the rights to the films,
right?
Afterwards for syndication. He came up with the idea of syndication before anybody else did. So, yeah, definitely pioneers. Today, hoy en día, we have films being made, not enough Latino films. It's costly. There's a lot of talent out there. What can be done to get more stories, our stories being told?
Well, one is to get the awareness to the community because we need to support these kinds of productions. And when we say support can come in a lot of different ways, right? All kinds of resources are needed to make a film. I made the comment when they were talking to some producers, about production. I made the comment, producing's like herding cats. It just takes so many things, and so many things can go wrong. And the more help you have, the better. And the help can be giving locations, getting permits, giving donations, volunteering, because there's all sorts of man hours that need to be done. The filmmaking that we're doing at this level, this isn't Hollywood filmmaking, right? This isn't multi-million-dollar trucks with giant stars and huge budgets. We're talking about independent filmmakers, and there are plenty of independent filmmakers that just need support. A $10,000 grant, a $20,000 grant could be the difference between making something and seeing us on the screen and it never seeing the light of day.
This is something that always occurs to me because I'm primarily a theater artist. And so I've always been so proud of our productions that we put together with $15,000. We put on excellent play with excellent set, costumes, and actors. And I always say, if we had more money, we could have a better set, better lighting, better production quality with this thing. So, well, Alex is talking about how the movies that are made without millions of dollars. Just imagine if we'd had $1 million to make this movie. How much the different kind of quality that we could have brought to this film. More locations specifically. We limited the location because of budget.
Maybe a more famous lead man.
Maybe a more famous lead man. Yeah, maybe one that actually could carry the role. So,
Rupert, you did an excellent job. I'm serious. I mean, you fit the part.
Thank you.
That was definitely typecasting, and it was so believable.
Right.
So believable.
Well, I think that again, I'm a theater educator, and I believe that that's where we need to also start. We need to support our young people getting into the arts, into acting, into filmmaking,
to writing,
into writing, and when we have that talent, it's out there. The other thing that we need to also support is the institutions that if places like that are major theater centers that get major tax money for their operation should be required to include productions written by, produced by, and acted in by Latinos, and also other people of color too. Not just our community, because our blacks and are also not represented. Actually, Asians are not represented.
Native Americans.
The Native Americans, right? So they should almost be required to devote a percentage, the same percentage of funding that they get should be devoted to the percentage of the population in their community. In San Antonio, and Dallas, and Houston, like I said, all over, in Denver, New York, Chicago.
And because that does bring up that issue, because once we've created the product, it's like, what do we do with it? You're not going to get too many 30, 40-minute short films on Netflix. But we need places to show it to audiences. And there are these venues out there that are publicly supported that aren't programming them. And so we need to put the pressure on them to do that.
Right.
So we can connect to the audiences, if nothing else.
Yeah, we've got the product, we've got the talent. I have no doubt about that. And we just need to get the institutions to promote them, to program them, and put them on.
But haven't we had the talent and the product for a long time now, and it's just busting that barrier? Getting your foot in the door, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm trying to develop a new project, and I contacted this actress that I worked with Closer to Bottom, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not doing film anymore. And I'm like, oh man. And I didn't get into it, but I respected her privacy. But there's so many reasons why people burn out. So they're like hitting their heads against the wall. They're banging. They get tired of the struggle, right? And so we can do things to reduce the struggle, to support them. Sometimes you just need a little bit of support and to keep going.
Yeah. As you said, support comes in many ways. I'm not a writer. I'm not an actor. I'm not a filmmaker or director, but I can support by buying a ticket.
You can certainly.
And you're supporting us by having these conversations and getting the word out.
Absolutely. And I encourage folks, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, share it. Share it with other people. Recommend this episode because, guys, hopefully we'll have you back one of these days soon. I'm anxious to follow the movie to see where it goes because it is a good movie. And thank you once again for allowing me to preview it ahead of time.
And let me just say, if you want to take a look at the trailer, you can go to our website, vecinosthemovie.com.
Vecinosthemovie.com, and I'll also put it on the notes here, so you can do that. But it's a great film, and I'll confess, towards the end there, I kind of welled up myself with a little tear. It was good. It was really good.
That's why we got to get it in the theater so that the machos, los hombres, pueden llorar. So
In the dark.
In the dark,
where
yeah.
can
Nobody will
see
know
you.
that they cry.
I go, honey, are you crying? No, it's my allergies.
Allergies.
We're in Texas. Allergies.
Texas.
Any closing thoughts from you, Rupert, Alex?
I just thanks for helping us, JR, to get the word out. And people can contact us if they want to ask us more questions or want to get involved in our productions. If they contact you through Tamaka or at the Buda Chamber, where I know you're based. You know how to connect us.
Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Cine Las Americas and Cine Festival, two festivals that are local. And when they come around again next year, I really encourage people to go participate in them because they bring wonderful Latino films. And it's important, I think, for us in the community to see the work that we're doing, see the films we're doing, because if you only see In the Heights and then you never see anything else, you never really know what's out there, and you're missing a lot. I was just amazed. I'm always amazed at the wonderful films that are being put out.
And if somebody's out there listening happens to know of a theater or a venue that you can actually show this, let us know because we want to get this film out to as many people as possible. Vecinos, love thy neighbor. Rupert, Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Latino Business Report. I'm Jared Gonzalez. And if you like what you're hearing, comment, and you can follow us anywhere you listen to podcasts.